Welcome to today's episode of Let's Build a Quad with Mr. Ummagawd. So first off, let's go over the tools that you're going to need, starting with a hot glue gun, followed by some type of flush cutting device such as this one. You might need some twisters. You will need an M2 hex tool. You don't need this, but if you want to make life easier for yourself, get a Sharpie. An M3 lock nut box driver such as this, 5.5. If not, a pair of pliers will do the same. In addition to the components, you want some heat shrink, preferably something about that size and something about that size. Maybe you want some zip ties, antenna tubing, some heat shrink. You will want a file, and last but not least, a soldering iron of some sort. Okay, now that we've figured out what tools we need, let's jump into the components that I'm going to be using. Starting with the Hype Train Ummagawd Edition 2150 kV motors. Perfect for 6-inch use. If you can, swing these on 5S, man. 5S on these motors with like the HQ 5x4.8x3 V1S motors, and it will blow your mind, I promise you. FPV camera of choice, none other than the Rotor Riot Swift 2 by Runcam. Then we've got my favorite VTX, the Immersion RC Tramp. And then because we just want to save a little bit of weight, we want to make things clean, we're going to run the Lumineer AXI, whatever. I call it the Dum Dum Lollipop. Oh, I should touch that one. You don't have to run this exact same one. I like this because it's nice and robust and it's very small, but any UFL connector, you'll be better off. So go ahead and find one. There's plenty of options. Furious FPV, they make the Pagoda in the UFL style connector. If you can get one of those or these, it is what I recommend. For the flight controller and ESCs, we are going with Hobbywing. This is the flight controller that they have got. This is the 4-in-1 40 amp BL Heli S flight controller and ESC combo stack. And this, guys, I've been flying this for months now. This is probably my favorite flight controller. I am slowly moving everything over to it. It is robust. No need to worry about the fact that it's 4-in-1. I've been stuck in trees. I have yet to burn out one of these ESCs, so don't be afraid. Plus, it makes life a hell of a lot easier, as you will see, because again, my goal is to build this in 1 hour or less. I want you guys to be up and flying in 1 hour using these components. One more thing, what receiver you're gonna run? Okay, so this particular build that I'm doing is probably gonna be a basher. I'm not really necessarily gonna go long distance, medium range, long range, or anything with. This is gonna be like the let's go hard and go all out. That's what this build is for. Let's get started. Take your remix out of the box and let's get everything nice and laid out. I recommend that you get all of your hardware laid out. Then we're gonna go ahead and get all the carbon fiber pieces out of its packages. Keep everything in its package because that is probably gonna be the easiest way to keep track of everything. In fact, let's go ahead and take this moment to take this Sharpie and write down on here what these bolts are. Down here, the short ones are going to be 10. Then one next right over to it is going to be 12s, 14, and the last two are 16. So do that and make life easier for yourself. Let's get these bad boys open. And then let's get all of the carbon out of the package. So we've got a top plate, 2 bottom sleds, a bottom hatch, a receiver plate, back LED plate, 4 arms. We've got the FPV cam plates. We've got a left and a right. We've got the bottom plate, which should have your press nuts installed. Step number 1, put your frame together. So that is the difference between this and other frames, is that you do want to put your frame together. I promise it's going to go so much better that way. So let's get to it. Let's first start off with all of the pieces in which you need to include one of these M3 lock nuts. Now, depending on which batch you get, this color might differ. I started off with gold. Gold is the inaugural color of choice because, you know, you gotta come out strong. You gotta come out wild. You gotta be like bling, mother bling. So all of the pieces that are going to require these M3 lock nuts, let's go ahead and put that in together. That is going to be your FPV cam plates, left and right, as well as your 2 sled pieces. Every time you see one of these little holes, that is going to require one of these M3 lock nuts. Now, if your M3 lock nut does not easily go in, let's go ahead and try it. Let's see if this one can go in. Okay, this one actually goes in pretty good. But let's say you've got a lock nut and carbon fiber piece in which this just does not want to go in. It's being a little bit. Then what you're gonna want to do is get your file, and you're gonna want to go along the sides just like this, and ever so slightly just go ahead and file it out very lightly. A couple of passes. You don't want to do too much. You don't want to take out so much that the M3 lock nut goes in and out and falls out without any pressure. But that's what you're gonna need. Just bust out the file. Give it a little tickle. Alright, push that lock nut in. Again, you want to make sure that the flat sides are completely lined up. It's going to go in that way. So this one's coming in a little loose. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little concerned about this. We'll see what happens when we go to actually complete this. But you don't want it to be loose. You want this to be so fit in there that it doesn't come out on its own. Alright, so then let's go to the other two pieces. This right here. Sometimes you just got to get a little bit of force. This is not perfectly lined up, but I'm guessing that once we try and bolt it down, it'll be good. Got one more. If not, you want to put down on the table, give it a little pressure like that, and that will get it in. There you go. That might have been a little too much. Let's go back on the other side to even it out. There you go. So that's what it should look like once it's centered. So now you got your M3 lock nuts in. Let's go ahead and take your bottom plate, top plate, and what you're going to do is create a little sandwich. So this is going to be the bottom where you can see the hex press nut. So let's flip that over. This is the top plate. As you can see, it's got some pocketing. What you're going to want to do is make sure that's facing this way. What you want to do is take your bottom plate, take an FPV cam side plate. So this is how you know this is the left. This is the right, because you want that chamfering pocket to be on the outside like that, and insert this like so. Now you're going to have a little bit of a hard time because this is going to be a nice snug fit, so you know it's in there because you can see the hole. Let's take the second plate, and now we're going to get that in there, and it should fit just like so. Once you get to this point, you're going to take your top plate, this is the bottom, got the pocketing, and you're going to place that right on top like so. And again, this is going to be a very snug, tight fit. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to reach over and you're going to get your 3mm aluminum spacer. And you're going to push that right over here. And then you're going to grab a 12mm right over here. Get one of your washers, place it on top, place it right over inside, and you're going to want to go ahead and just kind of loosely tighten it up. Just finger tight. You don't need to take a tool yet. So here's where you should be at. Now let's go ahead and put on the bottom sled, which is going to comprise of these two components right here and this bottom plate. Now with the bottom plate, what you're going to want to pay attention to is there is a top and there is a bottom. So you want this with these cutouts to be at the top portion of your build, okay? So what that means, you want to take these, place it like this, take the other side, go like this, take that assembly, and that is going to go like so. And to put this together, you're going to want to go ahead and take your 14mm bolts. Let's go ahead and get 2 washers for that. All right, we got one side going in over here. Let's get this too, and just get it prepped up over here. And what's going to hold this together, a 28mm standoff. So get that. It's the shorter of the two. Place that right inside, and now you can go ahead and tighten up your bolts. All right, then you can take this back plate. Now this is just a temporary little solution. You guys can do whatever you will with this. You can cut a hole to mount your antenna, but this is just there if you wanted to put even the little sticker. So you guys should have gotten a sticker like this with a little license plate. I thought it was going to be kind of cool to put that little license plate sticker right there. That would then go over here like so. In fact, maybe I should just go ahead and put it on right now. But just know that this is going to be a loose piece, and the only reason why it's loose is because this is there for a future like accessory such as an LED board or a mic and buzzer or whatever we decide to come up with. I wanted to have a little spot back there that you can go ahead and put something aftermarket accessory just so that you can further customize your build. But remember, this is not a structural piece to the frame design, so don't fret if you've got a board that is a little bit loose here. If you run into a situation where your M3 lock nuts are falling out like this, let's see if I can get this back in real quick. In there we go. So this one is a little bit loose, so you want some heat shrink, maybe about 16mm. Cut a small piece, about yay. Let's cut 2 pieces, about yay. And here's just a little trick so that these guys don't fall out. Again, put it right over it like so, and then you want to go ahead and heat this up so that it doesn't move out of its place. So now that you've got the shrink wrap right over here to prevent these M3 lock nuts from falling out, what you want to do, take your back LED plate, go ahead and insert that in now. So now it's on. Now you're going to go ahead and take your 34mm standoff. Okay, 34mm standoff is the longest standoff that you will have in this package. And now you can go ahead and let's go ahead and just close this up really quick, just so that everything stays nice and still and it snaps in place like that. Look at that, everything is good. You're gonna want to take two 10mm bolts. Let's go ahead and take two washers. Let's go ahead and prime them up. The standoff in there. Let's get the bolt on. Let's get this threaded in. You don't want to tighten this just yet. Just want to go finger tight on everything. I'm not even using a tool yet. I'm just getting everything started. But what you do want to do once you're done is you do want to apply a little bit of Loctite onto all of these points just to make sure that it doesn't back out during flight, just being extra safe. Okay, I'm not showing that part on here because we're just trying to show you how to put this thing together, but you guys at home, put a little dab of Loctite. The next thing we want to do is put the arms together, but before we do that, we want to go ahead and put a couple of bolts in to just keep everything nice and structurally integral. So we're going to grab 4 12mm. Actually, what we're going to do here is we're actually just going to go ahead and get one 14mm bolt alongside 3 12mm bolts. We're going to go ahead and get ourselves 4 washers, and we're going to go ahead and get this part in. And that is just the inside motor arm. Just finger tight. You don't need to get the tool out yet. Now, this 4th one is where I'm going to actually go ahead and put in our lipo catch. Now, this, with the stack that we're using, is what makes the most sense. Now, on this one right here, this is where you're going to use your 14mm bolt. So let's put that right here. Let's get the washer. Let's get that going. All right, let's do a quick check. So at this point, you should have your main frame assembled, and it should look just like this. Finger tight on everything. And now we're going to go ahead and finish everything off. Let's go ahead and get these arms. So you guys need to make a decision at home. If you decide that you want to go ahead and configure this for props out, put them in this way, okay? And the reason for that is because for prop out rotation, you want to make the motor wire guides be on the inside, right? So if you're doing props out, props are spinning this way. If the motor wire guides are on this side, less chances of it getting struck with a prop in a hard crash, which means no chances of getting your motor wires cut. If you are doing props in, what you want to do is take your arms and actually flip them over and install them this way, so that way your wires are on this side, and when your prop is rotating this way, there is no chance of your motor wires getting cut. Now, I like props out, so I'm going to go ahead and get set up and put them in this way. Now you're going to go ahead and finish off by getting 12mm bolts out of your 12mm pocket. Get a washer. Again, just finger tight. Now you can go ahead and do that for the rest of your arm. So again, I'm doing a props out rotation. So this is what's going to make the most sense. There we go. As you can see, because it's chamfered, it's got this nice little pocket. Everything is actually like a nice snug fit, and I'm going to go ahead and fill in the rest of these motor arm holes. So now I'm actually going to go ahead and finally take my M2 hex tool, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to tighten it down all the way yet. I guess you could at this point, but I'm going to just go ahead and get it nice and snug. Okay, so at this point, you've got the main part of your frame built. Now let's just go ahead and do the remaining piece, which is where the session mount or your HD camera would go, and that is where these 3 pieces come into play. You will have a left side, a right side, and then this plate that goes in. I recommend that you actually take these 2 pieces and you assemble it together like so first. If for some reason you find that these pieces won't go in, because again, we wanted to make sure that the tolerances were good, so we wanted to err on the side of it being too tight to the point that you file it a little bit and make sure that everything's a nice good fit. So if you need to, just go ahead and file a little bit of the sides that are here away for these pieces to go in together. This mounts just like so. And what I recommend doing is actually just getting the side bolts that go on these sides first, which are 10mm bolts. So let's go back to our little packet right here, and thankfully we wrote down 10 so that I know exactly that these are the 10mm bolts that we are looking for. Here we go. Let's get a washer in. Let's get it in right over here to the side, and let's again just finger tight. That's all we need to do just to begin with. To finish off the session plates, we are going to go ahead and go with our 16mm bolts. These don't need any washers because this piece right here is already got built in. It acts like a washer itself. Here it is. I'm gonna go ahead and take out the N2, and as long as you got your N3 lock nuts lined up underneath here, this part should go very smoothly. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this up now. So these are 16mm bolts. sized perfectly if you're going to run the session mount that this remix frame is designed for, but it's long enough on purpose so that you could run something just like this. And you can see there's a little bit of space there, about 2, 3, I'll say about 3 millimeters spaced out, so that you could run aftermarket accessories such as a 3D printed session mount. At this point, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten things up here. And again, the whole goal is to put together your remix frame, because everything goes in afterwards very easily. The next thing that we're gonna wanna do is go ahead and get all of our components prepped nice and ready, starting with the camera. So you just wanna make sure that the camera that you're using, in this case, this is the Runcam Swift 2. What you want to make sure of is that it's running one of these back plates that has this. That way you can make use of the adjustable cam angle. I'm going to go ahead and reach in here now and get the actual bolts that I need. Now, hopefully you did not tighten this up as much as I did, so I'm going to loosen this up a little bit so that I've got a little bit of play here. You're going to want to go ahead and place it inside. As you can see, it should just be a nice, perfect fit actually. So once you've got those holes lined up, you're going to drop in one of the screws. Just get it slightly tight. It doesn't have to be super tight just yet. Let's go ahead and get this back screw in. So this back screw is what adjusts the actual angle. Now, I do want to take this moment to point out that you don't have to run the Runcam Swift. Any full-size camera should run on here, even micro size if you've got the appropriate adapters. Did I just look at that? Look at that. I just, wow.
Strumpf. Go ahead, flex on him. Flex.
Wow. That's what that means. I'm a superhero, dude. I break steel, dude. Let's take a moment. As mad as I am right now, you cannot get mad that these types of things happen. If you are like me and you eat your Wheaties, you will probably break steel screws like I am right now. I'm actually going to just keep moving on, because at the end of the day, 3 bolts are going to hold this camera on. I think that's honestly going to be enough. So I'm going to get this back screw going. Here we go. All right, let's tighten that up. Now that you got the camera in there, let's flip the hatch open. As you can see, everything is nicely presented to you for you to work on. So next thing you want to do is go ahead and mount your motors to every single arm. So let's go ahead and get that started right over here. A motor, we're going to go ahead and get, we're going to need an M2.5 for this. For the sake of this build video, I'm just going to run 2 bolts per motor. I do recommend that you run at least 3 just to be on the safe side, but I'm gonna run 2 just to speed up this build video for you guys. All right, all 4 motors should look like that. So now that you've got all of your motors on, the next thing you want to do is just to make things nice and tidy. I like to go ahead and get the motor wires nice and routed. You're gonna want to use the inside guides just like so. Give it a little bit of tautness. You want to make sure it's taut. And then electrical tape right over here as close to the body as you can, about yay long. Let's go ahead and lay this electric tape down. Get that nice and wrapped up like so. The next step is to work on our stack that's going to go in the middle, and we want to start with the receiver. According to the manual, we've got ground, 5-volt, S port, and then S bus out. Now I don't know why they sent it like this, where the yellow is on S port, because we don't need S port. What we need is this guy right here, S bus out. So we're gonna go ahead and modify this connector that came with your RXSR. Let's pull out this connector and we're gonna move it 1 down like so. Okay, so as you can see, we moved the yellow wire down 1, so that is S port. Now this wire is good to go. I'm just gonna get and twist this up and just very quickly mock this up. So this is going to go something like that. So let's go ahead and connect this now. That way we can have some nice clean wiring. So this is going to go there, and at some point our flight controller is going to go here, and for S bus connection, this wire needs to go through this first top 3 right over here. As you can see, it's ground, 5-volt S bus. So if that is the case, my guess is that I'm going to need about, let's give it a little bit of slack, but we're going to need about this much wiring. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this now right over here. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this nice and ready. I'm going to go ahead and strip it out like so. Let's get the receiver plate. We're going to go ahead and slide that in between the plates here, and you just need to angle it correctly, line it up, and now let's go ahead and get the hardware, the long bolt and a nut from your Hobbywing stack, and we're going to go ahead and secure that plate in. Now before I tighten this up all the way, I'm going to go ahead and get one more bolt in so that way I'm not tightening it down when it doesn't need to be. And I recommend starting off with the opposite end just to keep things nice and balanced. So let's go ahead and get that one in. Alright, now you've got your RX plate there. What we want to do is we want to go ahead and get a small piece of double-sided sticky tape, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the excess here. And now we're going to go ahead and peel off the other side. So as you put this in, what we want to do is just get your wires, and you're going to want to go ahead and route this through here like so. Okay, so that you've got them coming out over here. It's going to be a little bit of a tight fit. Okay, you're going to want to push it in, but you flip it over, and the main thing is you just want to make sure that you can actually get to that bind button right in there. You can barely see it, but as long as you can get to it, as long as you can see it, that's all you want to make sure of. So I'm going to go ahead and push down and get this nice and rested right up on here. I'm going to go ahead and take the antenna wires, and I'm going to go ahead and route them this way. And again, very important step. You want to make sure that you can get to your bind button right there. You could bind this later on. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just put a small piece of something there just to give a little bit of cushion in between it and the ESC that's about to go there. So this is where you should be at now. The next step, the next layer in here are your ESCs. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So here's your ESCs. We pre-tinned them earlier. Alright, so the next thing you want to do before you put your ESC flight controller stack on is your hobby wing stack should come with these little O-rings. I recommend that you put them on like so. You want to do so for each corner. So the next thing is now you can go ahead and take your ESC, take note of that arrow, make sure it's pointing upwards, and you're going to go ahead and set that down. Now at this point you are ready to wire up your motors. Take note, on the side here you can see 3 little holes. If you want to do some really nice clean wire routing, I would run them through here like this and then have them come out through here. But I'm not going to do that because this is going to be my basher, and I have a feeling I'm probably going to have to replace this motor at some point. So having them run through there just makes things a little bit harder. So what I'm just going to do is actually just go ahead and twist everything up, and I'm going to go ahead and start soldering them one motor at a time. Yeah, if you're using the hype train motors, these are like of the perfect length. So these wires from the motor are already tinned, so now all I gotta do is just bring them down into here just like that. Oh, that's beautiful. There you go. That looks nice and clean. So now get ready for our lipo pigtail catch. So here's where I got the pigtail. So if we were to just kind of measure this out a little bit, let's just say we want it to stick out about that much. Oh, you know what? We should try and have this come out the other side so that it doesn't hit this. So we're going to go ahead and move that pigtail over. I had it on the wrong side. So I had it originally on this side, but just so that we're not running into these connectors, I'm going to move this over to this side. So let's get this measured out. I think it's going to be about like this, at which point it's going to go to about like that. Get this cut. Okay, let's go ahead and get this stripped out. Then what we'll go ahead and do is get those wires tinned up. Alright, that's good to go. The hobby wing stack is going to come with this capacitor that we want to run, especially in my case because I like to run 5S. So what I recommend doing is actually pulling this guy off and soldering this onto here. You know that this capacitor has the negative sign because it's got that written right over there. Go ahead and get it soldered up on the outside, and I'm going to go ahead and put some shrink wrap. Now that you've got the heat shrink on your XT60 connector and you got your capacitor on there, again, make sure your polarization is correct. We're going to go ahead and get this started and wrist route this through. I'm going to go ahead and get that like so. Loosen that up. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten it back down so that it is nice and in place. I'm going to flip it back over, get these wires routed and get them into their respective spots. So we got the positive on that side, the ground on that side. I'm going to go ahead and get started like so. And that's good. Let's move on to the FPV system, starting with the tramp right here. Now the first thing I want to do is I like to get rid of this SMA connector. And the reason for that is because this guy right here is actually pretty damn heavy. and there's a lot of weight to be saved if you are to use an antenna such as this from Lumineer with this micro UFL connector. And we're just going to go ahead and replace these two items right here. And to do so, we're going to go ahead and cut into the shrink wrap. And then the best way that I do it is if you just twist this ever so slightly and back the other way, you can go ahead and break that nice little seal that they got on there to make sure that everything stays tight. It should come off nice and clean like that. The next thing you're going to do is go ahead and take your new connector and place it on like so. It should snap into place like that. And then you're going to want to go ahead and take a nice dab of hot glue, just so that you guys understand where things are going before you hot glue this in. Here's our tramp. We want to go ahead and mount this like this, and then we want to zip tie the antenna here. So the reason why I want to do this is so that way you've got this UFL lined up the way it is before we put some hot glue on here, because we want to hot glue this the exact way that we intend to use it. So this is the way we want to make sure that we hot glue this as it goes down. So let's do that right now. Now that you've got a good amount of hot glue on there, we want to cut this piece with the connector that we plan. It's gonna go like so. So this is gonna be placed right over in this general area, and then we're going to have this wire run through. This is what's going to connect into the camera. But what we want to take note of is somewhere here our flight controller is going to be mounted, and the video in and out wire, which is this yellow wire, we're gonna have to splice that. It's gonna go into these pads right here. So you want to just go ahead and just loosely measure out where that is gonna happen, which I'm guessing is gonna be about right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this wire next, tin these wires so that we can go ahead and get these prepped. Now these wires are made out of silicone. You can just get your fingernails like that. Now here is something to just be very cautious about. So this connector is the side that's going to your camera. This is the side going to your VTX. So in other words, you want to make sure that your camera side is going into the in there, and then your VTX side is what's going to connect to out. So let's go ahead and let's do the VTX side first by inserting that in. I'm going to go ahead and solder that piece like so. This is going to be the camera side. Alright. Lastly, you want to get these power wires set up. So to power your receiver, you're going to just use these two ports right here. You're going to use this ground, and you're going to use this VBAT. So I'm going to give it a little bit of slack, and I'd say that this is a good place to go ahead and cut it. Now I'm going to go ahead and strip these wires, tin them, and solder them in. So now that you've got your VTX with the new UFL connector, and you put your bit of hot glue on there, and you got the connector going the right way, then the next thing you got done is, now that you've got your VTX connector wired up, so that you've got your camera side signal going into the VN, your VTX video signal to the V out, and then you've got your power to the VTX wired up from the ground and VBAT connections on this flight controller. The next thing you want to do now is get your tweezers, and you're going to go ahead and reach in here and get your receiver wires, and now you're going to go ahead and feed it and get it to the respective pads on your flight controller. So let's start off with the ground. So I've got the black wire. I'm going to go ahead and feed that through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and get that soldered in while I've got it. Now let's go ahead and flip it back over. If you can get all of these on now, I'd recommend doing so. Alright, got that. Now let's get the last guy in, which is our S-Bus signal wire. S-Bus because we're running FR Sky. This right here is UART3, which has the built-in S-Bus inverter. If you're running Spectrum or if you're running Crossfire, you're going to want to make use of that signal pad right there. That does not have the S-Bus signal inverter, and that is that. So what you want to do, just to make sure that you've got a good connection, is you want to give these guys a little tug. That's good. That's good, and that's good. Alright, you're ready to just button everything up. So what I recommend, you want to go ahead and grab these spacers that came with your Hobby Wing stack. You place them on each of these corners, tuck everything down, and you want to make sure that that arrow is pointing up. And when you go to rest this inside, you want to just make sure that over here on this side, you got these pins that need to line up with that connector on the ESC. So make sure that that's good. Set it down like so. And as you can see, there should be no gap. Okay, it should be nice and firmly seated. And then you could button this up. So now with that down, we're going to go ahead and take the last set of 4 O-rings, place them on top. Again, these are the O-rings that came from your Hobby Wing stack. And now you can go ahead and secure with these nuts. All you need is a finger tight. These don't need to be astronomically tight or anything like that. You just want to make sure that they're nice and snug so that they're not loose and not going anywhere. You want to make sure that you're not also like squishing or basically tearing the O-ring. If you're messing up that O-ring underneath there, then you're putting them on too tight. So now you've got everything on. This step right here might be a little tricky, but what you want to do is just get your camera plugged in and take note so that the pins are facing the way that they should be, like this. You're going to go all the way to the far right, and then you're going to go ahead and plug it in. So you're going to notice it is a 3-pin connector going to a 5-pin connector on the camera side, but the 3-pin works just fine. Just make sure that you got it all the way to the far right. And you can double check that because 5V is up top, so you see that red wire. Ground is that next pin, which you see there. And the next one is video, which is this yellow wire. And then these two don't get used. If you do want to use audio, because the Swift 2 does have this mic, then you want to use the other connector that comes with the Tramp, and you're just going to connect that audio wire straight to there. But I'm not going to use that today. Good to go. Just make sure it's nice and seated. And now, finally, we just need to mount the VTX, so let's get that guy out. For this, we want to go ahead and get some more double-sided sticky icky tape. Cut out a nice little piece like so. If you want to run a zip tie, you can. There's a zip tie hole right there that you run through. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and run this. In fact, I'm probably going to go ahead and run one more piece of double-sided sticky icky tape just to give it a little bit of depth. This one's going to be a little bit shorter, so let's do that in half up there just to give it, balance it out just a little bit more. I'm going to take the other side of that piece of tape and stick it right here. Center this up. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and just route my connector. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in, and now I'm going to go ahead and line this up nicely like so. So the next step, now that we've got our VTX in place with double-sided sticky tape, we're going to go ahead and secure the antenna by taking a nice small zip tie like so. We'll start off on the back side. I'm going to use these 2 holes because I want it to go into the middle, so I'm going to go ahead and get that one through there, run through. On the other side, go through the other hole. Now we're going to secure. Okay, let's go ahead and aim it a little bit, bend it a little bit, just so that it's aimed nicely. I'm going to go ahead and make this nice and tight. There we go. Now your antenna is nice and secure. And so now really the last piece are your VTX antennas. Let's actually close this up real quick. So let's button everything up so that you can see how everything goes. So this is going to go in like so. We're going to go ahead and take 2 10mm bolts. Let's go ahead and take these guys out. Let's go ahead and run a washer through them. Place them right here. This is going to go ahead and secure the hatch now, so now you can't open it. Bolt it up. Let's finish the rest of the bolts, which really is on this side, so we want to go ahead and get a standoff over here. So let's get the remaining 28mm standoff. That's going to go right over here, and we're going to get some 10mm bolts with some washers. And at this point, you might as well go ahead and make sure that everything is nice and tight. The last piece is to go ahead and get your antennas going now. So as you can see, I had the antenna wires right out on the outside, and what you want to do is, in my opinion, for a basher build, this is going to be ideal. The reason is because you want this antenna to be as far away from this VTX antenna, because this guy is just screaming. This thing is just yelling stuff out, and this is trying to listen. This is these 2 guys is for your radio link. But here's the thing, because you're going to route it out here, and because I run props out, okay, depending on the crash, a prop could strike this. And so because of that, what we're going to do is going to go ahead and get some antenna tubing, and we're just going to head and cut a small piece out so that it'll fit where this antenna goes. I'm going to go ahead and run the antenna tube right through it. and then we're gonna go ahead and just tape that. Now if you want to, you can go ahead and run one more piece of tape like right here just to keep things nice and neat. I'm actually gonna just go ahead and do that. So that is that. Now the next step here is to tell the flight controller that it is actually upside down. But before I do that, I just want to talk about alternative builds. So maybe you don't want to run this flight controller, this all-in-one stack. Maybe you want to run something a little bit more traditional where you've got the flight controller and then all of the 4 ESCs respectively in each corner. I'm going to go ahead and show you this build. So this is a flight controller where you've got each respective corner for the ESC stacks. I place my ESCs here. What you want to do is place your ESCs as close to the body as possible and then route your wires and mount it to your flight controller. Now this particular flight controller has the pads on both the top and the bottom, and so in this case I was able to just mount it straight up onto there and all is good. And as you can see, once you close this, you want to get your ESC as close to this body as possible, because this part right here as well as this will create triangulation, which means it should keep your ESC safe when you have a hard crash. And then lastly, if you are running something like a Crossfire, if you like the stock antenna setup, this is a 90-degree configuration that we have used. I've been told that this with the tuned antenna on the Crossfire works pretty well, but I haven't actually gone out at distance with this particular setup yet. But if you are running something like the Immortal T on your Crossfire setup, this is how I've got my antenna mounted, just completely horizontal to the Remix. And then obviously as long as you've got that antenna horizontal on your receiver, you should be good to go. Now let's jump back into this particular build, which is the FR Sky RXSR. The next thing you want to do is bind your receiver. So you want to get something nice and sharp. So you want to go here, let's go to, let's just model 6. Yeah, I don't know what that is. It's like that. Okay, yeah, okay. All right, so you're going to go to page 2. Press up over here. You're gonna go click bind. It's gonna make that nice chirping sound. And then over here, again, hopefully you have placed your receiver in a way where you can actually get to that bind button. So that's gonna be very critical. And hit this button, like so. And that should be nice and bound. Take your session gel pad. You wanna go ahead and get that installed. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that and place that onto here. This, as you will notice, is extremely sticky, which is good because this is what's going to give your session some anti-vibration properties because it's sticky. That's going to make for some nice anti-jello. Then the next thing you want to do is place your battery pad. Same thing. All right, there we go. Okay, so this is going to go on like so. I'm gonna go ahead and take off this piece now. We've got this nice sticky icky battery pad on there. Make sure you take your battery strap and you're gonna want to go ahead and run it through here, and then you're gonna want to go ahead and run the other strap through this side, and that way you've got 2 battery straps to keep your battery in if you want to run it this way. Then of course you're going to want to run one more strap through there to keep your GoPro from actually ejecting. The last thing we want to do is, remember, we mounted the flight controller and ESC stack upside down. In other words, roll 180. So this motor, which is normally motor number 3, is now connected to pad number 1. And vice versa for all those. So what I'm going to do next is walk you through how to change that very easily into the Betaflight CLI configuration, remap your motor resource allocation so that way everything is pointed to the right way. Plug it into Betaflight, get your USB, go ahead and plug it into the side, and let's connect. We're going to plug the battery in. And I just want to illustrate what's going on here. So I'm going to go to motors. First of all, you're going to notice on the screen is that the whole thing is upside down. Even though the quad is right side up, the whole thing is upside down. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to configuration. I'm going to go to roll. I'm going to set that to 180 degrees, hit save. All right, we're going to connect, and now everything should be the right way up. Now on mine, for whatever reason, this is set up as a hex. It's not a hex, so I'm just going to go ahead and make that quad X. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now I'm going to go to the motor tab, and I'm going to spin up motor number 1. And motor number 1 should be this back corner right over here. But remember, we mounted this flight controller and ESC backwards, upside down, so this is the motor that's actually going to spin when I try to spin up motor number 1. Right? So now I'm going to go to motor number 2, just again to confirm. Motor number 2 should be this one, but this is the one that's going to spin up because we got everything backwards. Alright? So now that I've illustrated why everything's kind of crisscross, I'm going to show you how to fix this. Go into the CLI. You're going to type in resource, and you're going to go ahead and copy these 4 values, these resource motor values, and I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to go ahead and open up a notepad here. As you can see, I've already kind of got something right over here. So I'm going to call this the default stack. I'm going to type in that. And what we're going to do is type in this again. And I'm going to go ahead and delete these values, because this is going to be the new values that we want to change. Now remember, 1 is going to 3, 2 is going to 4. So those are the 2 values that we're going to have to swap. So if you look up on here, motor 1 is now going to be whatever the value is for motor number 3. So this, we're going to type in 803. Motor 2 is going to be what is actually up here at motor number 4. So we're going to type in 802. Motor 3 is going to actually be what motor 1 is, so that's going to be B00. And then motor 4 is really going to be what is this value over here, and that is B01. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to highlight it, I'm going to go in here. I got to free up these resources first, so I'm going to type in resource motor 1 none, resource motor 2 none, resource motor 3 none, resource motor 4 none, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste what I copied, hit enter, hit save. Alright, and everything is good to go. I'm going to connect back and double check that the motor assignment is correct. I'm going to go to the motor tab, click this to say that I understand the risk, and we don't have the props on, so that's good. And now if we did things right, motor 1 should spin up right over here. There it is. Motor 2 right over there, got it. Motor number 3, good to go. Motor number 4, good to go. So now the next thing you want to do is make sure that the props are rotating in the right direction. Here's how I do that. I just go over to the master tab, I get this all to spin up a little bit, and then I go over here and I feel it. Your nuts might fall out during this procedure. Alright, so you want to go ahead and just touch this right here. So this is spinning inward, so number 1 is wrong. Let's go to motor number 2. That's spinning this way, so that's good. Motor number 3 is spinning this way, so this is wrong. Motor number 4 is spinning out, so that is good. So it's really just motors 1 and 3 that need to be reversed. So go into BL Heli configurator. You want to make sure you have a battery plugged into the quad, otherwise when you hit that read setup, nothing will pop up. Now we want to go to ESCs 1 and 3 for my specific build, and we want to go ahead and reverse the motor directions there. Once you click save, we'll go ahead and go over to the Betaflight configurator now to double check that our changes actually took place. So let's go over to the motors. Spin up number 1, and that is now spinning the correct direction. We didn't check any changes to motor 2, but let's just check it anyways. Motor 3, that is now spinning the right way, and just for a good measure, we'll check motor number 4, even though we didn't change anything there, and that is good. So let's go ahead and move on to the rest of the configuration for Betaflight. So we connected the FR Sky receiver to UART1, so let's make sure we enable that for serial RX. We'll click save, and then we'll go ahead and go to the configuration tab, and let's make sure that we are running DShot 600 for these ESCs. We want to make sure that we are going to reverse the motor direction, because I like to run the props out. And then we can go ahead and disable the barometer because we don't use that. And then let's go ahead and make sure that we set this both to 8K for maximum performance. For the receiver, we are running the S-Bus, so let's make sure we set that to S-Bus. And we'll go ahead and enable anti-gravity and dynamic filtering. Alright, so let's go ahead and click save. And let's go on to the next piece here, which is the power. So interesting, you got to calibrate the current sensor that's on here, and to do that you want to just go ahead and go over to the power and battery tab, And I found that 250, maybe even 240 is about the closest that I've been able to get to. It won't be 100% accurate, but it will definitely be close enough at that value. Next, for PIDs, you're going to want to go ahead and, so this is for my specific build, right? So this is 2150 kV motors on HQ5 by 4.8 by 3 V1S props on 5S. So I want to go ahead and share these PIDs with you. I think that this handles like it's on rails. It flies like it's on rails. It is completely amazing, but your mileage might vary, so you might want to just double check to make sure that your motors are fine and you're not getting any crazy oscillations with it. And since I'm here, I might as well also share the rates that I normally run. This keeps it nice and soft in the center, but nice and snappy at the very end. And that's pretty much all I change. If anything, anti-gravity gain, I'll set that to like 1.9, but that's just personal preference. Now let's go to the filter settings. This is really where all the magic happens. Set this to PT1 and turn off all of your notch filters. Now here's what I do a little different. I actually turn up the low pass frequencies, and the higher the number, that means that the less filtering that's happening. And the less filtering means an overall just a much better performance, a lot faster response, but it also means that you're going to be a lot more susceptible to any vibrations or noise in your system. So just try these values out. Make sure your motors aren't getting hot. If they can sustain a higher number like that, you will most likely love it. Alright, so moving on to the receiver tab. This is all going to be very dependent on your radio. If you're running a Taranis like I am, my specific Taranis likes to have the channel mapping set to TAER. Yours might differ just a little bit. I also give that things a little bit of deadband just because my gimbals start to glitch around center stick, and having that deadband eliminates some of those glitches. So finally, we go over to the modes tab. This is going to be all personal preference as well. I personally like to use the same stick for arming as well as I use air mode. And the reason why I do that is so 2 flicks down will have it armed and air mode on, but I can also just go 1 click down to disable air mode for those times where I want to land, perch, and not have it bounce up and down like crazy. And then I use a second switch to set up angle mode as well as turtle mode. This is for that oh shoot moment where if you for some reason lose FPV and you need to fly it back line of sight, that helps. Or if you just need to use turtle mode because you crashed, that also helps as well. So once you're done there, you want to go ahead and click the save button. Again, this will be all personal preference to you and what you like to use for your radio. This is just what I like to do, so let's go ahead and share that. So we'll go ahead and click save and move on to the OSD. Here's going to be another thing that's going to be completely up to your own personal preference. I like to basically turn everything off and just keep the main battery voltage going, the timer, as well as the milliamps drawn, so that way I know that when I am exhausting my pack to its capacity. The voltage is also a good way to do that, but it's not as direct as having your current drawn, so that's why I like to do that. Click save, and that will then pretty much end it. It is now time to go out for a test maiden, and hopefully everything's good. Now this is my way. This is just one way that I have built this. Obviously there's several different ways that you could build this. I'm curious to see what you guys come out with. There's probably even better ways than I'm thinking about and how to put this together. I would love to hear those ideas. Guys, good luck and see you on the next one.